Well, let's talk now to our good friend, Mr. David Spencer, Head of Crime and Justice at the Policy Exchange, former Metropolitan Police Detective Chief Inspector. David, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you very much for joining us. I mean, the police, I have to say, did a brilliant job yesterday. They got to this scumbag within 7 minutes, I think, of being called that he was outside a mosque, outside a synagogue, rather, trying to break in through the window with his knife, and they neutralised him in a very, very efficient and very fast manner. So I think we should start off by thanking them for that. But, I mean, obviously, they've got a very difficult problem in this country now, because we don't really know how many other Jihad al-Shamis there are out there who might feel now empowered more because of the fact that Keir Starmer's recognised the Palestinian state, because of the fact that, you know, it would appear that Hamas are winning the propaganda war. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, there's an awful lot of Semitic feeling in this country, as we just heard from Annabel Denham. 1 in 5 people in this country now supports anti-Semitic beliefs. Yeah,
well, certainly you're absolutely right about the bravery of the police officers, and indeed those who were inside the synagogue and who were doing security at the synagogue yesterday as well. Just remarkable bravery. And on the police officers as well, we saw the Chief Constable of Greater Manchester, Sir Stephen Watson, in his press conference yesterday, the model of the sort of police chief that we need in this country. Yeah. Someone that we've hosted here at Policy Exchange before, giving a really confident and clear briefing to the media and to the public in terms of what had happened and what his force was going to be doing next. So I think we saw a really good day by Greater Manchester Police yesterday, and particularly by the officers on the ground and the Chief Constable. Yeah. In terms of the wider picture, of course, a lot of people have said they're horrified but not surprised about what happened yesterday, and I would join that as well. The reality is we cannot be surprised when we have essentially allowed to be normalised the sort of anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic sentiment that we have in the last 2 years, with the widespread pro-Palestinian marches that have taken place over the last 2 years. I think one of the things that's really revealing about these marches as well is that obviously we saw the demonstrations yesterday in Whitehall, which obviously got really out of order, control, but also I think Manchester, Edinburgh, Liverpool street stations, and they were out straight away, these marchers, after this terrible atrocity. Yeah. And we saw exactly the same after the 7/10 terrorist attacks, is that the pro-Palestinian organisers of these marches were applying to the police within hours of that atrocity happening. So, you know, it is quite remarkable, but now unsurprising, that these marchers, these protesters, are ready to go as soon as there is any atrocity at all, any attack against the Jewish people. They're ready to go. And personally, I have to say, I find it repugnant.
Well, I do too, and I think a lot of people do. And I get the point that, you know, people should be allowed to make demonstrations and they should be allowed to protest, even if you find it repugnant, la-di-la, that's fine. But, you know, in this particular instance, surely to heavens, Shabana Mahmood, who's now claiming that she is completely powerless to stop them. This is in the same week, by the way, and 24 hours after Keir Starmer says he's going to do everything he can to protect the Jewish communities of this country. Well, allowing people to march around major cities of this country, chanting from the river to the sea and calling for the death of an entire nation and calling for the assassination of individual Israelis and individual politicians who are, you know, perhaps seen as pro-Zionist and all of that. You know, that is not protecting the Jewish community. And surely to heavens, if Palestine Action, for example, is planning to march, they're a prescribed terrorist organisation right now. Surely the Home Secretary of this country could stop that if she wanted to.
Well, there are very specific powers about what you can ban in terms of protest. So you can't ban an assembly, so a static protest, but you can ban a march, and they have been banned several times over the last sort of 20 years or so. So a march certainly can be banned. Now, the circumstances where you can do that are quite tightly defined, and if it was in London, the Commissioner would have to apply to the Home Secretary for permission to have the march banned, and it's only if there is a risk of serious disruption or serious risk of serious public disorder. Now, actually, when we wrote about this about a year ago at Policy Exchange, we said that the circumstances should be broadened somewhat to be able to ban a march to include very serious disruption to the life of the community or very serious risk of serious damage. Right. the moment, there are provisions which enable a ban, but they are very tightly defined.
Right. I mean, what about the other excuse that they use whenever they want to pop round to your house for a tweet that you've sent out that you don't like, and they call it distress to people? You know, surely marching around calling for the death of Israel is going to distress people who are Jewish. And so they could always use that. The Metropolitan Police, by the way, have just issued this statement about 10 minutes ago. The horrific terrorist attack that took place in Manchester yesterday will have caused significant fear and concern in communities across the UK, including here in London. Yet at a time when we want to be deploying every available officer to ensure the safety of those communities, we are instead having to plan for a gathering of more than 1,000 people in Trafalgar Square on Saturday in support of a terrorist organisation. By choosing to encourage mass law breaking on this scale, defend our juries are drawing resources away from the communities of London at a time when they are needed most. We urge them to do the responsible thing and delay or cancel their plans. I mean, the police are actually admitting this is an unlawful gathering, right, on the basis that they're supporting a prescribed terrorist group, and yet they're not stopping it.
Well, I think
don't understand.
Circumstance. Yeah, the law, the legal framework probably means that they can't stop the actual assembly. If there was a march, that would be different. But an assembly, they probably can't do that. Now, the reality is the police have made no unreasonable request here, given the circumstances and the context. But once again, we see that the organisers of these protests are very happy to go ahead. I imagine the organisers are delighted that this is the circumstances that they find themselves in over the coming week or so, or over the coming weekend. The reality is what we need to see from the police is they cannot back down. They need to be absolutely robust. Anyone that is breaking the law to even the slightest degree needs to be arrested and put before the courts. So the police, they do have the resources and the manpower to do this, particularly in London. There's 33,000 police officers available for deployment. They absolutely need to be policing these protests within the law and robustly to deal with these people.
Well, the last time there was Palestine Action protest, I seem to remember, there was about 900 arrests.
That's right. And I mean, that is the...
Isn't that a good enough reason to say that that is such an unlawful act that we're not going to allow it to go ahead?
Well, certainly when we've looked at this in terms of the legal framework before, we've said that the legal framework is not sufficient and there do need to be some changes. But the number one thing that the police need to be doing is applying conditions within the law, so restricting where the protests are able to take place and the times they're able to take place and these sorts of things. But where law breaking happens, these people need to be arrested and brought before the courts. And so we saw, particularly in the early stages of these mass demos, all sorts of deeply unpleasant things, people calling for intifada and these sorts of things, and the police weren't stepping in, or calling for jihad and not stepping in. The police have recognised that they didn't get everything right. Well, what we need to see is them getting everything right, and that means arresting these people when the law is broken.
Yeah, absolutely right. David, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Head of Crime and Justice at Policy Exchange, also former Metropolitan Police Detective Chief Inspector. Why